Hi everybody, it's Anna and welcome back to my booktube channel. This video is going to be my Geekly wrap-up for the week of November 11th through November 17th. Before I get started with this video, thank you to all of you who reached out to me to let me know that my channel finally reached my goal of 300 subscribers, which I was hoping to hit by the end of this year, and as it turns out, I have now hit about midway through November. So thank you all so much for supporting me as I continue to make these bookish videos on the internet. I really appreciate each and every one of you who takes the time to watch my videos, comment on them, and engage with them otherwise. So, that being said, we return to business as usual. This week I did not play any board games, but I managed to read 7 books. Most of them were for the Believathon, which is the children's literature readathon that I'm doing, so I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit about those first. First, I read The Vanderbeekers and the Hidden Garden by Karina Yan Glaser. This is the second book in her middle grade series about the 5 Vanderbeeker siblings and their hijinks that they get up to in their family's brownstone in New York City. This one was kind of an homage to The Secret Garden because the Vanderbeekers decide that they're going to turn an abandoned lot near their house into a community garden, and they have to sort of outwit the real estate magnate fella that's trying to gentrify their neighborhood in order to do that. So that book was really fun. Then I read a new picture book that's called Ezra's Big Shabbat Question by Aviva L. Brown, illustrated by Anastasia Kanavaliuk. This was a book that came to my attention because it was on a list of Jewish children's books, and I was doing some research related to that. And also, this is by a Black Jewish woman, and I don't recall ever having read any other picture books for children that were by Black Jewish authors featuring Black Jewish children as characters. So this was really sweet. I enjoyed it very much. It's about a boy named Ezra that likes to ask big questions, and his big question is, can he tie a knot on Shabbat? Because he's walking around with his shoes untied, and so he goes around and tries to ask everyone, and it had a wonderful message about how Judaism is something that everybody practices and interprets differently, but we're all part of this one culture. So that was really excellent. I enjoyed it very much. Then I read The Green Children of Woolpit, which is a historical kind of a fantasy novel by J. Anderson Coates that's about this girl named Agnes who finds 2 children with green-colored skin trapped in a pit in her village in England, and this, I believe, takes place in the 1100s, something like that. It's apparently based on an actual event that really did happen. There were 2 green-skinned children that appeared near the village of Woolpit, but this book takes the interpretation that they are actually fae creatures from under the mountain in the fairy world, and Agnes gets kind of embroiled in the fae court's drama and has to figure out a way to outsmart the fae king so that she can continue to live as a human being and not as a tortured fae servant for the rest of wherever. I didn't like this book as much as I was hoping to. I kind of found that even though the mythology and folklore was interesting, the prose was a bit underwhelming for me, but I think it was fine. There were no issues that I had with the book. I just think that the writing style didn't gel with me as much as I would have hoped. And then I read a truly excellent book, which might be my favorite book that I've read for Believathon so far, and that is Strange Birds by Celia C. Perez. This is about a group of 4 girls who decide to become friends because they are all living in this same town in Florida. Each of them has a mystery that they want to solve and a sort of passion that drives them. One of them is a bird watcher, one of them is an aspiring young reporter, one of them is a researcher, and one of them is an artist. And this is a story about their friendships. I appreciated this because of how diverse the cast was, how amazing the writing was. It was funny, it was smart, it was very heartfelt. And I also appreciated that Aster, who is one of the characters, is homeschooled, because so was I. And it's very hard to find books that are written for kids that have homeschooled characters. So that was really interesting. And I absolutely loved this book, especially as someone that grew up in Florida. Getting to see all of those little bits and pieces that had to do with Floridian history and culture was super interesting. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars, and I know I'm definitely going to pick up her first novel, which is called The First Rule of Punk, just as soon as the library waiting list gets it to me. Okay, then I read another fiction book that was a book club book, and this is called Today We Go Home by Kelly Estes. And this book I cannot honestly recommend, and here's why. It is a historical fiction book that is told from 2 alternating perspectives both are women who are veterans. One takes place in the present day. Her name is Larkin. She is a veteran of the wars in the Middle East. And one takes place in the Civil War era, and it's the story of Emily, who is a woman who disguises herself as a man in order to serve in the Union Army during the Civil War. Now, I thought that the author tried to do a lot of things with this book and did not execute any of them particularly well. There's a lot of ableism in this book, and there's also a lot of condescension towards people and characters in the book who are not white. There's nothing that you would be like, yes, this is outright offensive, but the subtle biases that are prevalent throughout the entire book just made this really cringy to read, because I was like, wow, I can tell that you tried to research the customs of people that live in the Middle East, but you wrote about the people that live there in a way that still seems very much through a white lens and through a lens of being condescending towards cultures that are not white American cultures. So that made me really uncomfortable reading this book. And between that and the fact that one of the main character that is from the present timeline has PTSD and some other issues because of what she's dealing with after her experiences in the war, and the other characters are they have extremely harmful attitudes towards that didn't appear to be in the book for any particular reason. There were characters that were otherwise very supportive of this character, Larkin, that if she would get even the slightest bit angry would say things like, well, I guess I can see that your PTSD treatment didn't work. And I'm just like, really? That did not need to be in here. There was just a lot of very damaging stereotypes, both against mental illness and also against races, people of races that are not white, that I honestly couldn't recommend this book. I was hoping it would be good, and it just ultimately very much let me down. Then I read 2 books for nonfiction November. The first of those was Chagall Burning Lights by Bella Chagall. This is a memoir of her childhood growing up in Russia, Eastern Europe in the early 1900s, and growing up in a Hasidic Jewish family. So it is told through different chapters that correspond to the various Jewish holidays of the calendar year. I thought that this was really sweet. The writing was very abstract. I don't know exactly how to put it, but it definitely felt like I wasn't just reading an adult looking back on their childhood. She wrote her memories as if she was a child, experiencing those things for the first time. So while there was that adult perspective and literary bent to it, it was really interesting because it definitely felt like I was viewing it through a retrospective lens along with the author. So I really enjoyed this. And then I read an amazing, amazing book, which is probably one of the best I've read all year, called Lowborn by Carrie Hudson, which is her memoir of growing up poor and lower class in England and Scotland, and her experiences, and how she, even though she has now, a very successful career and happy relationships with her partner and everything like that, there is this part of her life that she's never really able to leave behind. She's never really able to leave behind the trauma of being abused as a child, never knowing where she was going to live, never knowing where her next meal was going to come from. This book was absolutely incredible. It does come with a lot of triggers for things to be found alongside poverty, homelessness, hunger, and also child abuse and neglect, and sexual abuse and rape. So just be aware of that going into it, but I would highly recommend this book. It was both powerful as a memoir and as a sort of study of the way that people continue to think about class in Britain to this day. It wasn't exactly the same as we have it here in the United States, but I think that if you are an American reading this, you'll be able to see some interesting analogs and also learn a little bit more about the experience of somebody experiencing poverty and homelessness in a different country. So those were all of the books that I managed to read this week. I didn't play any board games. That's mostly because this weekend I went to Geek Girl Con, which was super amazing. I got to meet Kathy there. So Kathy, if you're watching this, hello. It was great to see you. I really enjoyed getting to meet you. And I went with my best friend Abigail. We cosplayed together the second day. Yours truly actually entered into the cosplay contest and won a Judge's Choice Award. So, here's a pretty little ribbon that I got. And the other part of the Judge's Choice Award, because everyone gets something pretty geeky as a prize, was I got my own paperback copy of Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse, which I thought was super fortuitous because I just read that this month for the Indigathon, and I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to get the second book, so now I have my own copy of the first, which was super awesome. I also hauled a couple of other books. Well, this one wasn't from Geek Girl Con, but I also went to Casey McQuiston's book signing here in Seattle, and so I got my copy of Red, White, and Royal Blue signed by them. I must say that, like, it was just such a joyful experience to be at that book signing and be surrounded by so many other queer people that were there for no other reason than to just be happy and, like, celebrate being ourselves. And I know that, like, times are changing and in many ways things are becoming easier for queer people, but that just reminded me, like, how I'm just able to relax when I'm in that kind of scenario, because there are just things that you don't have to worry about when you're surrounded by a bunch of people who just get it. I did get another book signed this weekend because Hafsa Faisal was one of the featured guests at Geek Girl Con, and she was on a panel and then did a little, like, meet and greet book signing thing afterward, and she gave me this really beautiful bookmark that has a quote from We Hunt the Flame on it, and also a little enamel pin that has like 2 crossed swords on it. It was really, really beautiful. I haven't actually read this book yet, but it's on my list. Hopefully it's going to be our Royal Book Club book for next month. So I have that, and I wanted to get it signed regardless. And also did a couple really funny workshops, one in which we did a fantasy world building exercise where we had to design our own animal. This is the animal that Abigail and I designed. It's called a quiddle. It's a feathered reptile that's a little bit like a more adorable, slightly annoying, but not deadly alligator. And it lives in swamps. And we came up with some truly fascinating ecology for the fantasy world that we built to house this creature, the quiddle, that I really, really enjoyed. I thought that that was amazing. Another thing that doesn't really have a book to go with it, but another thing I experienced at Geek Girl Con that I loved, is that I went to a panel that was all about romance recommendations. Olivia Waite, who's the author of The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics, was there, and a bunch of the other panelists are librarians and writers and people that read a lot of romance, recommended amazing titles, incredibly diverse romance titles. So I will see if I can find, they made a Goodreads list of all of the books they recommended and link it down below. As you'll see, I don't know when you're gonna see it, if it's going up before or after this video, but I'm starting a new series on my channel about my experience trying to get into reading romance novels for the first time. So that is, you know, relevant to that series, but I thought that I would stick it in here because I did it this week. So, as you can see, it's been a pretty intense week in terms of reading and general geekery. If you would like to talk with me about any of the books that I've mentioned or the things that I've mentioned, or leave any romance recommendations, because those are some things that I need in my life currently, please feel free to leave a comment downstairs, like this video, and subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more content like this. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you incredibly much for 300 subscribers, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.